Ooh, that's a fancy countdown.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
I love a countdown, me.
Loves me a good countdown, you do.
All right. Well, hello, fellow Whovians, and welcome to Season 2 of Threedowho. This is really a labor of love for us, and I hope you enjoy watching as much as James, Mike, and I enjoy making this program for you. So, Mike, how you been?
Sheesh, what a month. What a month. All I can say is I've been super busy with travel and other obligations, and, of course, the weirdness that is America now is weighing heavily upon my soul.
Yours and everyone else's.
Yeah.
Apparently, voter regret is at an all-time high. People, like the biggest Google search on November 2nd, late in the afternoon, was, "How do I change my vote?"
So my husband suggested that we buy a compound up on a hilltop somewhere and surround it with 20-foot high fences, and then put signs on it that face out that says, "We supported Trump, leave us alone."
That might do it.
It might do it, yeah.
James, how about you? How you been?
It's convention season, so for the last 2.5 weeks, I've been cosplaying as the mucus monster from Space Babies.
Ah, okay.
Apologies for any sniffing noises that come from my direction. Today is the first day, literally, in about 2.5 weeks, I have tried to get through the day without Lemsip.
Yeah, I took my COVID and flu booster yesterday, and so today I'm a little stuffy, just
so yeah.
reaction.
But say, kind of, for those people who don't know, I do online tutoring, and I am now very good at hitting the mute button just before a sneezing fit. And I promise I didn't quite hit the webcam with the snot one time. It landed just to the side of it, and the students kind of like, you know that Starfield effect with all the stars rushing towards you? It was like that for them. Right.
3 special effects.
Yes.
Oh, right. So let's get on to some Who news. What say you guys?
Absolutely wonderful.
Okay,
And I promise you I've made it easy for you to read today.
Yes, I skimmed through it earlier, and the first story I have was the only story I could find when we were supposed to record last week when James was ill.
Yeah, sorry.
But it's sad news. Cinematographer Ernie Vincenze has died at the age of 81. So Ernie was the director of photography on 38 episodes of Doctor Who between 2005 and 2009. Responsible for the camera work and the lighting on each episode. He was in charge of the entire first series of the Revive show in 2005, looking after each episode of the Ninth Doctor's era before completing the Christmas special, introducing the 10th Doctor. He shared the load over the next 3 years, which was his final episode, or with his final episode being The Waters of Mars in 2009. He was elected to the British Society of Cinematographers in 1978 and is a fellow of the BKSTS, which I'm assuming is some kind of television fellowship. I'm not sure.
British Kinematic Televisual... no idea.
Something like that, yeah.
That's probably what it is, though.
Yes.
But he served on the BAFTA Council for 20 years. He was the head of cinematography at the NFTS from 2000 to 2002. And he won the 2008 Simru BAFTA for his work on Doctor Who, Voyage of the Damned. Russell T. Davies paid tribute to Vincenze on Instagram. He was our DOP in Series 1 and 2 of Doctor Who back in 2005, lighting the whole of Season 1 himself, and what a lovely man. He was always smiling, always happy to see you. Freezing nights on The Empty Child, Mad Ambition on The Parting of the Ways, and there was Ernie smiling. Hungarian-born, he had a hell of a career working as an escape working on Escape from Sobibor.
Sobibor.
I thought you were going to say working as an escape artist for a moment.
That's what I thought I was going to say, too, for a second. And with Madonna on Shanghai Surprise, and we must have looked like squawking chickens to him in those first weeks, but he smiled, helped us, and we loved him. Night, Ernie. Thanks, darling.
Aww.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. He was, if you're going to admit anything about Season 1 and most of Season 2, the lighting and cinematography was pretty darn good.
the cinematography right across the
Yeah.
whole of the revival has been really quite impressive.
I mean, I think it's thanks in part to Ernie's influence on the set. So next we have some Blu-ray news.
Blu-ray.
Supposedly, the next classic season is to be released on Blu-ray has accidentally been leaked. Before season 25 had landed on the shelves, one of the people associated with the Blu-ray collection has put a tease photo about the next season on the site formerly known as Twitter, now known as Dumpster.
I've deleted mine, by the way.
That. Yeah, I deleted mine as well.
Yep.
Long ago. Now, while such tease photos have appeared before, this one was deleted shortly after it appeared because it appears that there was one very small piece of information accidentally left in the photo that made it possible to work out which season it was. Deliberate or not, we know for sure which season it is at least being actively worked on, and you'll be in seventh heaven when it comes out.
Okay.
Cheeky, James.
Yeah, it was. It was one of these ones that don't say. I'm going to sing the praises of the Blu-rays later on, but yeah, there's a tradition on social media, we shall say. So Lee Sullivan, the brilliant Lee Sullivan, who does the cover images for the box sets, he will put up, say, a color palette for the cover image to kind of allow people to kind of like, oh, what season's that yellow and green in? Yeah, well,
right.
Oh, I don't remember a pink season. And someone who I won't name because I don't want to embarrass them. They put up an image, and they were doing it to advertise the season 25 box set as well. So what they had was the season 25 box in front of their monitor, and on the monitor there was a PDF of a script.
Oh.
And theoretically, he had positioned the season 25 box so that you couldn't see any of the identifying information on the script.
But
there was
in theory, it was not quite.
There was one tiny little bit of information left on, which a lot of people picked up on very quickly. And yeah, the post was deleted, so we don't think it was actually done deliberately.
Well, I mean, every Whovian has that little bit of Sherlock Holmes in them that
of course,
wants to crack the case, and they all tend to be a little bit obsessive about finding the little details.
Even if we grew up playing on the Commodore 64, trust me, we were all on the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yes.
So yeah, I won't say it for certain, but the next one is looking very likely to be season 7, which is going to be interesting, but more on that once it has been confirmed.
Yeah. So
because the technology to get that one out.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to get these things shifted over to more modern media. Especially with just the litigious nature of BBC products.
Yeah.
So let's go on talking about more physical media. So in the physical media is king news, before James uses season 25 later on for some trivia, yet another reason to stick with physical media is unexpectedly cropped up. 2 of the Fourth Doctor stories have unexpectedly vanished off the BBC iPlayer, apparently due to rights issues. Terror of the Zygons and the Seeds of Doom. Oh man, I like Terror of the Zygons.
Right, I like Seeds of Doom too.
Yeah, also good show. Now can't be streamed, and there's no indication yet if or when they'll be back. It's likely that this rights issue has something to do with streaming and not the physical releases, so it's not expected to hold up season 13 when it eventually gets released. But it's another reason to hold onto your discs and support physical releases. Then we have one more piece of news, because James is a little extra today.
That's okay.
And that is, physical or otherwise, there is a plethora of Doctor Who stories heading our way in formats other than TV. 2 new single CD audiobooks featuring 15 and Ruby are now out on Ghost Beach and Sting of the Sasquatch. I didn't think they had stingers. I mean, we've got Sasquatch out here, but I've never seen a stinger on.
Yeah,
it's when he slaps you, it stings.
If you read the synopsis on Amazon or other sites are available to purchase it from, it does explain why it's called that.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to picture Sasquatch with a stinger on. its tail. This doesn't. Yeah, because they don't have tails. So
It doesn't mean they can't have a
my
stinger.
brain's broken.
I mean, you don't have to have a stinger in your tail.
Well, most insects do, though.
But if it's a alien, they can have a stinger anywhere.
And Triffids had them in the top bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. That's true.
So you know.
So the first books in the new Icons range, Frida Kahlo and the Skull Children, and Charles Darwin and the Silurian Survival are also out, and the next Doctor Who magazine book scene about the Daleks is now available. And if that weren't enough, this month also sees the long-awaited arrival of the Fugitive Doctor at Big Finish. It's almost like Christmas just around the corner.
Ooh.
And
I would Fugitive Doctor.
I would comment on the quality of these products, but we're actually recording this before they're released, but this is coming out after they're released.
No, so you can't tell how the quality is yet.
Yeah,
That's okay.
So there'll be some more reviews next month, potentially, for Christmas presents ideas.
Well, let's hope so, because we need some news. I mean, luckily you dug up some news, because all I found was the sad news about poor Ernie.
I've got to say, I mean, social media issues aside, there's a very big lack of Doctor Who news at the moment. I think it's because they recorded what they're calling season 1 and season 2 back to back. And they don't want to publicise the Christmas special called Joy to the World too much just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think when we get around to recording next month's, we will have news about Joy to the World. And then hopefully, when we then record January, we should know a bit more about what is upcoming in... I can't get my head around calling it season 2. Yeah. Again, yeah. So, Shooty 2. This time it's personal. I'm waiting for Shooty in 3D.
Who isn't?
Yes.
But yeah, as I say, it's actually really unusual to have this little Doctor Who stuff. The War Between Land and Sea is apparently filming in the Canary Islands at the moment. I literally found that out about an hour ago before we recorded.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very strange at the moment. But the good news is, as I said, that's why I put all the merchandise stuff in, because it's a sign that people still have faith in Doctor Who. You know,
Right.
2 audio stories this month from BBC Books. A whole new range of books from BBC Books. You've got the debut of The Fugitive Doctor in a one-off story this month, and then the big box sets next year. So there is a lot of stuff going on, but we just seem to be kind of like in that calm before the storm when it all happens.
Mm-hmm.
And bizarrely, that's going to crop up when I start talking about the Ninth Doctor as well, because, yeah, the birth of the Ninth Doctor gets a little weird.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, since you sprung it, that is the topic of this month's show, the Ninth Doctor. So we're going to be talking about the Ninth Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston. So the Ninth Doctor was the apparent sole survivor of the last Great Time War. Apparently, I'm dyslexic this morning. But as you can imagine, he was traumatized by what he had witnessed during the Time War, and by his guilt, having believed that he had destroyed Gallifrey and killed all the Time Lords and Daleks. Though he projected a friendly and jovial attitude when he was in good spirits, this incarnation of the Doctor tended more towards the brooding and acted rudely at times as he traveled the post-Time War universe. I mean, he was grumpy. I mean, I
was a dick.
Yeah.
No, the word you're looking for is he's northern.
Northern.
Okay.
He's definitely northern.
That's how we phrase it in this country.
Every planet has a north.
North.
Yes, every planet has a north. That's right, yes.
So the Ninth Doctor held a deep hatred and fear of the Daleks. When he discovered that they were hiding in the year 200,100, the Doctor stated that he would like to burn every last stinking Dalek out of the sky. In the end, when the Dalek Emperor dared him to destroy the Daleks and Earth with the Delta Wave, or simply allowed the Daleks to kill him and take over the universe, he didn't pull the trigger and happily called himself a coward instead of a killer. The Ninth Doctor was never my favorite, He is responsible for introducing the Hooniverse to two fantastic companions, Rose, played by Billy Piper, and Captain Jack Harkness, who later got his own spin-off in Torchwood. And so that's my little quick intro into the Doctor. I didn't really want to get into, the actor who plays him, because Christopher is, he's just kind of as grumpy as his...
he's northern.
He's brilliantly grumpy.
Yes.
He's never ever going to be Sir Christopher Eccleston, because he openly refers to his hatred of the royal family. He called the Queen the parasite in chief in her silly hat.
Yeah, he's a polarizing figure.
Yeah, but he's also a damn good person. I mean, he runs marathons for charity.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. I don't want. I just, like I said, I don't want to get into a fight between, how good is he, or how controversial is he.
How did they pick him to play the reboot Doctor?
Right. This is one of those things where, if you know British TV and the way a certain person works, you should have had money on him from the word go.
Oh.
Okay.
Because prior to playing the Doctor, he basically played Jesus.
Okay.
But a modern day Jesus in a production for Channel 4 called The Second Coming. Would you like to guess which author wrote The Second Coming?
Russell T. Davies?
Russell T. Davies, yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah. So just to fill you in, because there's an awful lot to go through about the kind of like the history of the Ninth Doctor and getting him to screen. We've had what fandom kind of like refers as the wilderness years. I call it the creative years, because we had some damn good products going on then.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, Doctor Who was dead in the water. There was no indication it was coming back. And if anything, there was an indication that it was actually going to literally kind of die out of the public consciousness, because the books that were being published, in the late 90s, they were coming out 2 books a month. And then by the time you get to kind of like 2002 or so, they're coming out 1 book every few months.
Mm-hmm.
The series as a concept really is dead. And then out of the blue in 2003, there's this announcement: Russell T Davies is bringing back Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a slight problem, because the BBC had simultaneously said that they were bringing back Doctor Who. Oh, shit.
Oh.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
BBC is infamous for left and right hand not knowing what each other are doing. Yeah. And it turns out that 2 branches of the BBC, had both secured the rights to bring Doctor Who back. But thankfully, it was the Russell T Davies version.
The asshole T Davies.
The asshole T Davies. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure we're
that's
not
the
the first to call him that.
No. His was the version that kind of survived the conflict.
Right.
So we did get one version of the Ninth Doctor played by Richard E. Grant in an online animation, and that was originally how the Ninth Doctor was going to go.
Oh.
He was going to go along the line of being an online streamed show.
Oh.
We got there a long time before streaming did.
Yeah, really.
And there was a one-off thing which featured the Master, played by Derek Jacobi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it would have eventually been revealed that there had been this massive war on Gallifrey, and that's why the Doctor was basically oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just the left hand, right hand not knowing what each other were doing.
But they were also copying off of each other.
They were copying off each other and not realising it.
Right.
But yeah, basically Russell T Davies pulled together a team of people that he had worked with. What was absolutely brilliant, though, is right up until the day before Christopher Eccleston was announced, newspapers in this country were still publishing different names for who was going to play the Doctor.
Right, I remember that,
yeah. And then, one paper, which I won't name because it sticks in my throat, it's such a scummy paper, said, we've got the exclusive that tomorrow, it will be announced that so-and-so is going to play the Doctor. And then, of course, the next day it was Christopher Eccleston announced, and oops.
Oopsies.
But yeah, so Christopher Eccleston, basically, he's got form with working with Russell T Davies.
Okay.
And
all right.
that's also where you get people like Phil Collinson, Julie, brain death, Julie, whatever she's called. I'm sorry, Julie, you're lovely. I've seen you in videos. You're brilliant. And yeah.
Anyway,
it was chaos. It was
Okay.
total chaos.
well, I actually binged the entire series with Eccleston in preparation for today's recording, and I learned a couple of things. This is where they defined that it's dimension in space, not dimensions, because he actually says dimension in, I think, the very first episode.
It's fluctuated over the years.
Yeah.
I know. I think it all
Yeah,
depends
yeah.
on the actor and how they pronounce it when they're on screen.
And if
And
they're
who
sober
remembers
enough
the
to get
S
it right.
at the end when they're typing it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then I thought it was funny that they clearly got some CGI money, but the CGI, the trope of them having to run through a room to get the CGI to chase them was like, oh, come on now.
You got to remember, right? I'm gonna jump in and out a bit with this because there's
That's
a lot
fine.
of things I need to defend about the Christopher Eccleston year. Because what you got to remember is you two are in America. You are used to
Right.
big budget productions. The BBC doesn't. I mean, basically, Doctor Who was pretty much the first science fiction the BBC had done in almost a decade.
Right.
Right.
Once Doctor Who started, then it suddenly realised that it could do science fiction again and fantasy. So we got this rolling schedule of Doctor Who with then Merlin. There was
Yep.
a series called Atlantis.
Yes.
So basically,
Yes.
kind of like, Doctor Who led the way. And because we hadn't had a series like that in such a long time, they didn't know what they were going to be able to do.
Yeah.
Right.
The people, the mill, praise be the people at the mill. They pulled the stops out every week because they were saying like, "Oh God, we've got this scene. How the hell are we going to do it?" And they said, "Okay, we'll do it CGI." And you've also got to remember that you say they had a CGI budget.
Yeah.
The CGI budget was probably still measured in pounds, shillings, and pence. Yeah,
Well, I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that it was bad. I know that it led the way for a lot of BBC, getting ready to do this stuff, and it was nice to see that they got some big name actors that are big name actors now that weren't when they were on the show. Simon Pegg was awesome as the baddie.
he was pretty big in England at the time.
Was he? He wasn't big in
Yeah.
America at
No,
all.
say he was
So-
big
Yeah,
in
Shaun-
England because of a sitcom called Black Books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead hadn't hit yet when
Yeah.
he first was
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Hulu.
and of course, gotta love Captain Jack coming in, and I thought it was fascinating because having not watched it for a while and then binging it, you actually get to see that whole story arc, and I didn't really realize that they were toying with the Doctor's sexuality clear back in this series, which I thought was very cool. It didn't even dawn on me that was a thing.
Yeah.
And
can I
so-
just say that, how great is it that Christopher Eccleston ran with it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
was,
thought
yeah.
it was the barbs back and forth, the sexual tension back and forth was clearly children would not recognize it, but adults recognized it like crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then the big question I have is, as we know with the Ncuti Doctor, that females can let it go, the powers within them.
Right.
But Rose couldn't, and that's what killed him. So, and I'm going to say that it's because they were split into two, and therefore they didn't have the full power of
Yeah.
the heart of the TARDIS in them, and they were able to let it go by joining hands, so on and so on. But anyway,
Well,
And
Rose
then-
just isn't a Frozen fan. That's what it is.
true. And then my other question is to James.
Yeah.
When, in what series did they decide that the TARDIS interior changes with each Doctor? Because they didn't change the interior from 9 to 10.
Right. And again, this is a mixture of BBC and technical. Okay. So we're going to start in 1963.
Right.
Because it's actually, important to realise that from 1963 to 1989, there wasn't a TARDIS set.
Right.
Okay.
Basically, they built this huge TARDIS set for the first story. And then for every single story, for the rest of the run of the classic era, it was, right, what do we need the TARDIS to do this week? Oh, okay, so we'll have a couple of walls, and we'll shove the console into the corner, and we'll make it look like it's the room, or, or, oh, shit, we're filming on actual film this week. Oh, tell you what, we'll just back project a picture of the walls. Yeah. So, the first thing is, in the classic series, the TARDIS changed every week. I mean, seriously. You can watch it from story to story, and suddenly it's like, where the hell did that section come from? The classic one, by the way, is if you watch a Hartnell story called The Web Planet. And the TARDIS console room has got kind of like, suddenly it's got alcoves, and it's got
right.
Very last season, season 26, the TARDIS set doesn't even exist. It's only featured in one story, Battlefield. And the only thing that's real is the console. The roundels thing you see is actually a backcloth with some circles printed on it. And that's why the lighting is so low. Because what's happened is, over the course of the years, the set has been built, dismantled, struck, stored, damaged. It's fascinating. Watching it through 26 years, you can see this poor console room getting bashed around. And
not even just the console room, but the exterior of the TARDIS too.
Yeah,
because it's flat packable. It gets beat to crap every time they move it from location to location.
So, in the classic series, there's no history of the TARDIS actually being consistent. It's only like from about 1983 to 1988 that there's any remote consistency.
Oh, okay.
New series comes along, and suddenly they've got this huge studio, so they think, oh, what we're going to do then is we're going to build a standing set. And so for the first year they build the set, and they says, oh yeah, we've been recommissioned, we can keep the set, But what we're going to realise is that Eccleston started in 2005, and Tennant regenerates in 2010. And between 2005 and 2010, there is a massive change in technology for cameras. And if you cast your mind back, one of those last batch of Tennant specials called Planet of the Dead, it was the first Doctor Who that was actually filmed properly in HD. The episodes have come out on Blu-ray loads of times, but they've always been upscaled from their SD versions.
Right.
And they've cocked it up nearly every single release. But Planet of the Dead, Planet of the Dead was the first one to be filmed in HD. And they filmed it, and they took one look at it and thought, shit, this looks like polysucking styrene. And so basically they realised this set, it was built for 2005, it's lasted 5 years, which is longer than any TARDIS set has lasted, but it's not going to stand up to the rigours of an HD camera.
Right.
We can either rebuild it from scratch, or, bearing in mind that when Tennant left, so did Russell T Davies, Moffat came in and he said, right, well, if we're going to have to rebuild it, we might as well rebuild it brand new.
Makes sense.
And actually, it's not even it's changed with the Doctor. Smith got 2 TARDISes. He got that weird metallic, orangey, brassy thing. And then he got the slightly more stylised hexagonal console look. So basically, what it's been is it's a case of kind of like, okay, first of all, it was built for SD, so they had to have a new one for HD.
Right.
Then they changed the studio. So basically, kind of like they moved from, I think it was called the Moat, into Roth Studios, I think it is. I can't remember the exact name. But that meant, oh, we've got to transport TARDIS. Oh, fuck this. Let's just destroy this one and we'll have a new one. So basically, it's kind of it's not so much that it changes because of the Doctor. That's actually a new thing. That whole scene where Tennant runs in and the new kind of Starlight Express console room.
Right, yeah.
That's the first time that there's been no in-story kind of, explanation for it.
Right.
And I say, it's not been when the Doctor's changed, it's been when the showrunner has changed. So so when Jodie came in, she got her console room because Chris Chibnall came in and wanted a different look for things. He wanted a more crystalline look.
It was a fantastic TARDIS interior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the And again, the fascinating thing is, you look between the end of the series and the revival, there were various attempts, including the McGann movie, of course, to bring the show back. And each and every time there were production drawings or sketches done showing what this particular person envisaged the console room looking like. And basically, it's the showrunner who has had the vision for what they want, rather than anything to do with the kind of the actor or the doctor or anything like that.
Okay, cool. Well, that answers my question.
Yeah,
thank you.
But it is fascinating because, of course, we've now got what I think of as the Starlight Express console room, because you've got people roller skating around it. Basically, it's got to do something.
Looks like there's a drag show ready to start.
Right.
Yeah, and basically, as with so many of the other console rooms, there's like these things leading off. It's like, where the fuck do they go? Are we going to see something?
Right.
Probably not.
No.
Well, we never hardly ever get to see anything outside of the console room in the TARDIS. I mean,
we did get to see a couple
now.
of things with Eccleston when he sent Rose down to get some new clothes. He sent her to the closet room, and we saw her rifling through the clothes and moving hangers around. But it looked like they just had set up hangers on the main set.
Basically in the Christmas Invasion.
Yeah.
That huge wardrobe room is actually the console room with clothes draped over it.
Right.
And if Tennant had walked like 6 inches further forward, he'd have missed the split screen and vanished.
Yep. So it was pretty good. And that's everything I have about. I mean, I really did enjoy watching it, and then now I've transitioned back into the David Tennant years, and now every night I watch a show before I go to bed.
Yeah, I'll have to say, Nine's run was definitely a lot of fun for me. I mean, just the fact that Doctor Who was back on the air was just like so joyous and such a happy time, because it we had been a while without any Doctor Who on TV.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I don't mind saying something. I was in a really bad place in my life when 2003 rolled around.
Yeah.
And bizarrely, I heard the news that it was coming back when I was, by chance, actually in a location that had been used for one of the fan films of the 90s. So it's really surreal. I'm standing literally in the spot where Liz Sladen had been, looking at my mobile phone going, holy shit, Doctor Who's coming back. And I remember Radio 1 played the theme tune for the first time, and I burst into tears.
Oh, yeah.
And I am so glad that I still have my off-air recordings of that Eccleston season.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen BBC. I don't know what BBC America is like, but we kind of, we have the continuity announcers before each show.
Right.
You got the BBC ident, and when he said, "Look out, monsters," because Christopher Eccleston is Doctor Who. And the hair on my... Just like, as it has now, just hearing those words in my head and seeing the visuals in my head of the BBC ident of the time.
Right. It was joyous. I remember you emailing me and chatting me about, Doctor Who's coming back. And I remember being super excited and super happy. And it was definitely a pretty heady time. I mean,
which was then instantly killed the day after transmission by the big tabloids, spoiling the fact that Eccleston had quit.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for that. One day you gave us the happiness for one day.
But thankfully, then David came along at the end and saved us.
But wouldn't it have been brilliant if no one knew it was happening? I mean,
it would have been.
Yeah. I have never ever. Russell T Davies. I mean, he basically leaks more than Donald Trump's diapers do.
Right.
That man cannot keep a secret. So I don't know kind of like why so much, But yeah, so it was very strange. So we had the first episode, Rose, and we got over 10 million viewers, which for the time was astounding.
Oh, yeah.
They were expecting we'll be lucky if we get 4 or 5. They got 10.
Good, that's good.
We had huge billboards advertising its return. The BBC kind of, they threw themselves at this. It wasn't a half-assed kind of like, we'll kind of, we'll give it a go. It's like they threw themselves at it. They really did. It was a massive thing in this country.
Interesting.
What I do want to say,
which is a nice segue into your section now.
Yeah, what I want to say is, there's been a lot of talk, because I mean, next year, we're currently in November 2024, so next May is the 20th anniversary of the revival.
Right.
Oh wow. Okay.
God, it seems like it was yesterday.
There's been a lot of talk over the years as to what went on in that first year.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you kind of, because I say social media is always talking about these kind of things, but actually, do you know what? That's the one area where I get the impression everything was going wrong. No one was happy. Everything was far more stressful. They were having to kind of do things on zero budget, and they suddenly realised that they had the whole weight of the BBC's expectations on them. The stress behind those productions must have been off the scale.
Oh, yeah.
Add into that, and again, I'm not going to name names or name stories, but add into that, there was clearly an issue with various cast members, plural, which caused tension. And to be honest, I do not blame Eccleston for walking. It's like, he did his year, he brought the show back, he clearly made himself very ill doing it. And that is why, for a really long time, he refused to have anything to do with Doctor Who, and I absolutely respect him for that. That first year, I mean, basically, the throw forwards at the end of every episode saying, next week,
right?
They came about because Russell T Davies didn't write episodes that were long enough. That's the only reason they were put on there, because Russell T Davies' episodes underran so terribly. You suddenly find, Doctor Who's come back. Oh, that's fine. No one will care. They are turning up at recording in, on location, and there are hundreds of people there.
Mm-hmm.
I vividly remember seeing, scenes where just like they're filming Doctor Who, and there are just scads of people just around, and they've got police cordons, to
and
keep the
I
back.
do not think that anyone, Julie Gardner. Sorry, that was the name, Julie Gardner. I do not think
better late than never.
Yeah, I do not think that Russell, Phil, Julie, Christopher, Billy, I don't think any of them knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And I think Christopher Eccleston said, do you know what? This is actually too much.
Yeah.
He's a very private person. It's only even in very recent years he's opened up about his mental health issues. He has the same mental health disorder as I do. Which, so it's just like, I've got so much respect for this guy.
Yeah.
And, to come in and suddenly find yourself surrounded by crowds, doing night shoots, doing kind of like, CGI where no one knows what they're doing, with scripts that are underrunning, with people who are causing complaints left, right and centre from other cast members and production team.
Yeah.
It is, off the scale. And whereas there are other eras of Doctor Who which have yet to be fully documented about what was going on behind the scenes, actually that one, no. I think that is too much of a powder keg. Yeah. And I respect Christopher Eccleston too much as an actor to say, go on, spill the beans,
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's kind of why I didn't want to talk about what was going on with him, because it's just, we weren't there. We weren't there.
No.
And we weren't in that work environment, so we can't say one way or another, whose fault it was.
This poor guy, there is an infamous moment in an interview he did as part of the press circuit and stuff. He was on a show called the Jonathan Ross Show. Don't bother. He's
I know.
Don't bother. Jonathan presents Christopher Eccleston with a Ninth Doctor figure, and you can see on Christopher Eccleston's face two things. You can see, but only in retrospect, of course, I've already quit. Why are they making these things?
Right.
And you can then see, oh my god, this is a Christopher Eccleston figure. And there's this moment, I mean, it lasts about 2 seconds, and then he's professional enough to get back into full-blown promo mode, where you can see in his face, what? Yeah. Yeah. And it's this, I mean, I say it's a wonderful moment. It's not, it's watching it in hindsight is painful.
Yeah.
So, we've got Christopher Eccleston. And, God, again, it's not just Eccleston I've got respect for. I mean, the whole BBC have suddenly thought, oh, God, we've committed ourselves to this show. The lead guy has already quit.
Yeah.
It has gone so spectacularly well. We have to do a second season. What the hell do we do? And so I kind of did my usual kind of like checking to see kind of like, you know, what was around at the time. So I mean, apart from the season 1 DVD box set, which is one of the best ones, it's got so many extra features on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And again, there's a few interesting behind the scenes comments which I shall make when I get to season 25. Okay. There were 6 Doctor Who novels. There were, back in the day, they used to release kind of batches of 3 novels at a time. So there were 6 done with Billy and Chris.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This one, by the way, called The Monsters Inside. I'm going to read you literally it's like a couple of lines from it. So I'm bisexual at the moment.
Okay.
I can't
Bisexual.
Bisexual. I love it.
Right. Flowers shrugged. EarthGov voted to group together non-human offenders. Alien prisoners have different needs to humans, so it made sense to put them in a customised jailhouse. And that's why Justica was built? Just the scat house at first.
Okay.
Wait, species-led creative and advanced technologies. But yeah, they managed to do a whole Doctor Who book with SCAT as an acronym.
Jesus. Wow, good for them. Yes.
Impressive.
Yes.
So, we get 6 books. So, I mean, you know, there's only 1 season of Eccleston, but it's about to get really impressive. So we get 6 books. Mm-hmm. We get the Doctor Who Annual. They actually revived the series. They brought back the Doctor Who Annuals. So in here, we get 4 short stories and a comic strip, plus some actual vaguely well-written features. You know?
Vaguely
So yeah,
well-written.
and again, this is going to feature in the trivia bit.
Okay.
We also get 5 stories in Doctor Who magazine's comic strip. We get the first one called The Love Invasion, which is actually pretty bloody good, to be honest. It's yeah.
It sounds very shagadelic.
It is basically it's set in swinging 60s London.
I just watched Goldmember again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You get one called Art Attack. There's one called The Cruel Sea. There's a groat's worth of wit. And basically, kind of like, you know, they've now reprinted the Eccleston strips 3 times in their entirety.
Oh, wow.
So they printed it as a Doctor Who magazine special. Then they printed it as a graphic novel. And then there was a range of books called Doctor Who: The Complete History. And if you subscribed to it, one of the free gifts was a set of hardback comic collections, one of which was the complete Christopher Eccleston Ninth Doctor ones. So, between 6 books, 5 comic strips, 4 short stories, and a comic strip in the annual, we've now already outnumbered the TV episodes.
Well, that wasn't that hard.
No. And to be honest, the Ninth Doctor kind of fades into obscurity for a while. There's actually, in the days when social media was social, there was an interesting kind of Doctor Who circle on Twitter that actively encouraged them to start with the Tennant episodes.
Oh, really? Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And then we had a kind of a bit of a renaissance, because when the 10th Doctor came on, they continued the books, and they actually started releasing them as audiobooks.
Okay.
And then they realised, oh, hold on, we never actually released the 9th Doctor ones as audiobooks. So they actually then went back and did them as audiobooks.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And you then start to get, from Big Finish, various new series-related boxes.
Right.
Eccleston isn't in any of them yet, but the 9th Doctor is. So the 9th Doctor crops up in the Churchill years. He crops up in an 11-part thing called Destiny of the Doctor. There's various short stories that Big Finish release featuring the 9th Doctor. A lot of them, by the way, are very worth hunting down. They're on the Big Finish website, as are all of these things. They can't get Eccleston, but they want to do 9th Doctor stories, so they release a box called the Doctor Chronicles, which is actually 4 9th Doctor tales, but told as narrated stories. So you get Camilla Kajuri, the guy who played Adam, and Nick Briggs, I think, does a couple of them.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, we start to get to the stage where they're running out of kind of steam with 12th Doctor stuff. So, they start to actually release old Doctors, new stories for old Doctors, and they released some more single CD stories, from the same range that this month's 15 and Ruby ones come out.
Right.
For all the past Doctors, and they did 2 9th Doctor ones. And then, out of the blue, Big Finish casually say, oh, by the way, we've got Eccleston.
Oh.
It's just, and everyone is just like, what?
What?
And it's just like, and they don't just get him for one story.
Mm-hmm.
There have been various kind of, Doctor Who alumni who said, oh, I'll come back and do just like 1 or 2 stories.
Mm-hmm.
In
Right.
total, he has done 37 episodes.
Wow.
Um,
So for
Well,
a
I would
man
say-
who says he'd never do it again, he's come...
he's mellowed.
Yes.
I think enough time has passed
Mm-hmm.
for him to have kind of got it out of his system. And actually, it's very interesting listening to these stories, because they're not quite the 9th Doctor you expect.
Mm.
He's not as grumpy. He's a bit more upbeat.
Well, that's good.
And do you know the really interesting thing? They're pre-Rose.
Oh.
So basically, they've kind of, they've given him 36 stories between the 9th Doctor's birth and Rose. And then he's also in one release in their 60th anniversary thing called Once and Future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's smart, though, because, it was obvious that the 9th Doctor, when he appeared on screen,
Yeah.
wasn't a fresh regeneration, that he'd been kicking around for a while.
And
So, I like that.
the other good thing is, what they've done with the 9th Doctor boxes, because they released them in 12 3-story boxes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theme to each box. So it's not like an arc or anything like that. These are basically, other than the first box of 3, which is a 3-part story, the other 11 are 3 stories with a theme, but they're standalone. You can listen to them in any order, basically.
Cool.
There's very little continuity between them, and some of them are absolutely brilliant. So yeah, Big Finish, no one knows how they did it. They haven't said what negotiations took place and anything, but they got Eccleston. And then when we hit the 50th anniversary, we started getting loads of books like this, 11 Doctors, 11 Stories,
Right.
which was then republished as 12 Doctors, 12 Stories, and we're now on 15 Doctors, 15 Stories.
Do they just add to the stories, or
They
have
just add
new
one
stories?
story each volume.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, along with the episodes on TV, the novels, the comic strips, the annual short stories, the 36 Big Finish episodes, the one story for Once and Future. We have now got a huge number of additional short BBC stories featuring the Ninth Doctor, either with Rose or travelling on his own. This guy, I mean, basically, for someone who, as you say, oh, I'm never going to do it again, we have got so much Ninth Doctor stuff. It is unbelievable. And yeah, I've got to say, it isn't perfect. And
well, nothing is.
I respect the privacy of those involved with Series 1.
Right.
Series 1. Because what
Ninth
they
Doctor
did...
season.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because what they managed to do was they took something that was a national joke and turned it into a must-see event.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And more than Russell T Davies, the person who did that was Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah, I mean, you get a really serious, actor
Yeah.
playing a very, iconic part, and playing it well. I mean, he played it really well.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
He was likable, but at the same time a little bit scary.
Yep.
Yes.
Just because of his weird mood swings.
Yeah.
I just think, he was a perfect choice to relaunch the series. I don't think it would have done as well with McGann if things had continued on after his movie.
No.
Especially if you know what the plans were for after his movie, and quite frankly,
Yeah.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
We will return to the Ninth Doctor as part of the trivia. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But I want to kind of do the trivia today in two bits. Because as this is an LGBTQ friendly podcast.
Yes.
Pretty much only podcast. We've never had anybody on who is not LGBT.
Yeah. I want to sing the praises of the Season 25 Blu-ray box on two levels. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I've sung the praises of these boxes before. There's only been one season release where I didn't feel as though they'd kind of pulled the stops out. But anything I've said about all the other boxes is just like, no, Season 25 hasn't just pulled the stops out. Yeah. It has gone amazingly. Right. So, Season 25 is the penultimate season of the classic era. Right. It is Sylvester McCoy's second season. There are only 4 stories in it, so you think, how can you get a Blu-ray box out of 4 stories? So, before I get onto the stories themselves, there is a tweaked format for Behind the Sofa for each one. Okay. They've also done nearly 4 hours worth of new interviews with important people.
Okay.
They have dug out 22 archive clips of BBC shows at the time who were doing interviews with the people involved with Season 25.
Okay.
These have not been released on DVD. These are new for the box set.
Oh.
Every story has got either or both raw studio footage and raw location footage. And I'm not just talking about a 5-minute extract. For some of the stories, they sat through the 10 hours that existed and managed to get it down to 5 hours worth of highlights. Right.
Fair enough.
There's a feature on there called Looking for Dursley. And this is why I wanted to make such a thing about the effort they've gone into with the extras.
Okay.
The season came out in 1988. It was the 25th anniversary season. Homosexuality was decriminalised in the late 60s in England. Okay. One of the actors, Dursley, was gay. He's in Remembrance of the Daleks. And he is an amazing actor. Sadly, not huge amounts of time after Remembrance of the Daleks, he passed away with HIV. So they've put together a tribute because basically kind of this guy could have been amazing. I mean, he had Hollywood looks. Forget John Barrowman, this guy would have been, you know. And so they've not only have they put together this documentary as a tribute to him, it has reduced fans to tears, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But in the behind the sofa for Remembrance of the Daleks, there are a few comments which I cried at. You know, because basically, you know, this was 1988. This was 20 years after homosexuality was decriminalised.
Right.
And this poor guy still had to show up at awards ceremonies with a girl on his arm to hide his sexual orientation. And there are 3 people across the kind of the various sofas who say some incredibly poignant, respectful, perfectly worded and amazingly touching things, not just about him, but they acknowledge that the situation in the 80s was still shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, people have been crying their eyes out at the Looking for Dursley, the behind the sofa stuff. It's just like, there was this one comment where it's just like, I nearly had to ask Alex to pause the disc because I wanted a blub. You know.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had so much mucus coming out of my nose and my eyes were already watering that, you know. Now, that is not the only ever so slightly homosexual part of season 25.
Okay.
Do you remember a story called The Happiness Patrol?
Yes.
No.
The Candy Man, the Licorice Allsort Man, everyone painted pink.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, you know how in other box sets they've done extended editions?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They haven't just extended Happiness Patrol. They have made it into a work of art.
Nice.
Hey?
They have created CGI set extensions. They have restored nearly 25 minutes of additional footage, turning it from a 3-parter into essentially the same length as some 4-parters.
Oh, cool.
It is... I mean, it is the gayest Doctor Who story. You know... And they've added 30 minutes. They've added 25 minutes of gayness. Like, yay! But they've done extended editions, and they can only really do this for certain stories, but they've done it for all 4 stories. So, in reverse order, Greatest Show in the Galaxy has had 2 of its episodes extended and new CGI effects added. Remembrance of the Daleks, you can watch it in its original broadcast version, you can watch it original broadcast edit but with brand new special effects, or you can watch it in a brand new special edition with extra scenes, new effects, reordered stuff, a better flow, and they weren't constrained by the 25-minute time limit. Happiness Patrol, you've got the original version, and you've got this work of art, which is the extended edition. And Silver Nemesis. You ready for this?
Sure.
You've got broadcast version. Broadcast version with new special effects. You've got the VHS extended edition. You've got a brand new special extended edition. And you have got a 55-minute omnibus version where they've taken out all the padding and turned it into a new series style episode. There are 5 versions on there.
That's amazing.
And the bit that kind of so many people overlook is if you have a Blu-ray drive on your computer, there are literally nearly 5,000 pages of PDF files on this, including multiple versions of the scripts for each one. And if you want to see how a story changes, read the different versions of the Remembrance of the Dalek script, because what we got on screen was not what was written originally. And the reason I wanted to kind of do this is because there is something that links quite a bit of Eccleston with season 25, and actually an awful lot of the rest of Doctor Who. I was going to call this the kind of the homage section. But then I thought, well, it's kind of like being homage with a sawn-off shotgun. So this is sequels, prequels, and lorries with loose back doors.
Okay.
Because the sad thing is, if you watch season 25, one story a night, you'll basically realise that Remembrance of the Daleks and Silver Nemesis are exactly the same story.
Okay.
They accidentally, basically, reused the plot twice in one season. And that got me thinking, I mean, I can't remember, how was it like this? I know there's 7 different jokes or something, you know. And there's like only about like 10 different stories in the world kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I kind of ran through not just the new series, but a few bits of extended media as well. And yeah, there are so many things that are interestingly similar to previous Doctor Who. So,
Reduce,
the
reuse,
cynic in me
recycle.
is the cynic in me is saying this is me taking the piss. But actually, what this is a really good way of doing is saying, do you know what? If you like this episode, then here's some other ones to check out for you. Right?
They have the same plotline.
Yes. Well, either the same plotline or similarities. So, Rose, our first Christopher Eccleston story,
Right.
that lifts scenes almost in their entirety from the first Auton story, Spearhead from Space.
Yep.
And there are certain bits which could be said to be lifted from Terror of the Autons, which was the second Auton story. But yeah, Rose, basically, it wasn't just the Autons coming back, it was scenes from Spearhead from Space coming back. His second story, End of the World, could be said to have slight continuity issues with a William Hartnell story called The Ark, in which we saw the world burn up because the sun expanded many, many billions of years in the future. Also from Eccleston's year, the story Dalek.
Okay.
Interesting backstory before I do the big link. There was a big thing in the press. I don't know if it was ever true or what the real situation was. Again, no one really knows. But they were saying, oh, they haven't got the rights to bring the Daleks back. And so apparently, you know, Dalek was never originally Dalek. It was a different monster, which allegedly, very strongly allegedly, morphed into the Toclafane from Last of the Time Lords. But Dalek, featuring a Soul Dalek being tortured by a despotic ruler who kind of is in complete control of everyone, was written by Robert Shearman, who wrote a Big Finish audio called Jubilee, where a Soul Dalek is kept by a despotic ruler who tortures it, and is...
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, but he reuses his own plots at least.
Right.
So the really interesting one comes with Tennant's first season, where we've got Rise of the Cybermen, the two-parter. If you watch carefully, the closing credits for that say, you know, with thanks to Mark Platt, because Mark Platt had written a Big Finish called Spare Parts, which dealt with the origins of the Cybermen. There's no link between the stories whatsoever. It's complete bollocks. I don't know why he got that credit. But, interestingly, another thing which I could have put in the news, but I thought, nah, Eric's got enough news stories to read out, I'll do this for myself. Big Finish do a range called Lost Stories, where they basically get scripts that never made it to television, and you know, they do them for audio. They are doing Genesis of the Cybermen, which is basically going to be the original version of the origin of the Cybermen story, as written by cyber creator Jerry Davies. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out when that comes out early next year. Right, powering through Tennant, we've got Gridlock, where we get the crab-like macra living off poisonous gases, which of course is a sequel to the Macra Terror, where the crab-like macra live off poisonous gases.
Yeah.
Yep.
In terms of trying to deal with continuity, good luck with Human Nature and Family of Blood, because that is basically the book Human Nature, which was originally a 7th Doctor novel from the early 90s. It was at least written by the same guy that wrote the book, so he adapted his own work, bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No Starfield of snot coming towards me, though, which is useful.
No.
So, yeah, we've got a lot of authors adapting their own work. And I did say that the annual would come back.
Mm-hmm.
There is a story in the Christopher Eccleston annual called What I Did on My Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow.
Okay.
Where do we know the name Sally Sparrow from?
It's very familiar, and I'm just not remembering at the moment.
It's a very angelic tale.
Blink?
Blink, yeah.
Yes.
Blink, yes.
Basically,
Yes.
in the Christopher Eccleston annual, there is a story called What I Did on the Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow, where Sally Sparrow, a child, rips off bits of wallpaper and finds messages underneath telling her what's going to be coming up and what's going to be happening, and I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Moffat needed a story, he reused one of his own ones.
There you go.
Right, into the Donner era, Fires of Pompeii. Very interesting one, because there's already a Doctor Who story where the Seventh Doctor and Mel are running round Pompeii on Volcano Day. Oops.
Yes.
Fires of Vulcan, but if you get it, it's brilliant. It is an absolute heartbreaker of a story, and it is the story that reimagined Mel and turned her into a fully rounded character.
Nice.
Silence in the Library.
Hold on, you've forgotten one of the trivia pieces of Fires of Pompeii.
Go on. Oh no, I'm not going to talk about reusing actors. God, if I talk about reusing actors, we'd be here till next month's recording.
Yes.
Seriously, if you look at Pat Gorman's IMDb, he's in about 600 episodes of Doctor Who as an extra, and basically, as soon as he appears on the screen, you know his character's going to die.
He's the red shirt of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it really is. Right. Silence in the Library, set in a big library where the Doctor meets people out of order. Well, there was a Bernice Summerfield audio called Timeless Passages, set in a big library where he meets people out of chronological... Again, author reusing his own work. The Lodger, the 11th Doctor story. The Lodger started out as a 10th Doctor story where he took up residence with Mickey Smith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ricky.
Yes.
Yeah. Still with the 11th Doctor, we've got A Good Man Goes to War. You remember the one where the Doctor kind of suddenly has this ragtag bunch of people who we've never met before, but he's got some kind of past connection with, and he summons them all to help him.
Right.
There was a 2010 audio CD called The Runaway Train. So 2010 is before 2011, in which the Doctor assembles a ragtag bunch of people we've never met before, and they all come together to help him. Anyway. Oh dear. Mm-hmm. Right. Day of the Doctor. I'm being a bit bitchy with this one because there's a lot from the Moffat era that can be traced to the books.
Right.
But you know this wonderful bit in Doctor Who where it's revealed that the really important people are hiding inside a painting.
Right.
Moffat then reused that in Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
There is an 8th Doctor book called Demontage, which is a book where basically the baddies hide inside paintings. Okay, on to Doctor 12. We've got Thin Ice set on the Thames Frost Fair. Remember that one?
Yes, I remember that one very well.
Interestingly, also at that very last ever Thames Frost Fair was the first Doctor, Vicky and Stephen, in the Big Finish story called Frostfire. So if you want to see a grey-haired, grumpy Doctor running around with a young companion, you can't because it's an audio. It's yeah. Empress of Mars. God, I want to get... this was the one that inspired me to do the dodgy rip-offs. Empress of Mars is a very interesting one because it's a big bootstrap paradox thing. It starts with the Doctor getting a message which summons him to an alien planet only to find Victorian spacemen there. And the story ends with the Doctor sending himself that message that dragged him there in the first place.
Right.
Just a shame there is a 5th Doctor and Turlough novel called Imperial Moon, which starts with the Fifth Doctor receiving a message, dragging him to the moon where he finds a bunch of Victorian spacemen, and it ends with him sending the message back to himself so that he... Oh, God. Yeah. World Enough and Time / The Doctor Falls, the finale of the 12th Doctor. Isn't it great when they bring two masters together like that?
Oh, yeah. But
it's
brilliant been done before.
It was brilliant when Big Finish did it previously in a trilogy of stories called the Vampire of the Mind, You Will Obey Me, and The Two Masters. Okay, we've got the Star Beast, which of course is a literal remake of the Star Beast. It cannot be denied. How the hell you are supposed to do continuity at this point is so far beyond me. Especially as they then go off into Wild Blue Yonder. A story where the Doctor and the companion are basically the only characters, and the monsters are things that adapt themselves depending upon how the Doctor and companion are acting and feeling. Except there was a Robert Shearman Big Finish audio called Scherzo, which is the Doctor and companion only in it, in a really big, long corridor where they are dealing with a monster that... oh, shit. Oh, and guess what? Things get summoned from the realms of fantasy in it as well. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah. And the last one for TV, I think, is actually the best one of all, because it's a story that has lifted an idea from a story that is based on a lost story.
Okay.
Space Babies. Where it turns out that the monster down beneath is actually really good and useful and is vital and is keeping the ship going.
Right.
Tell me the plot of The Beast Below.
Where
they find out that the ship is being taken forward by the big monster thing.
Yes.
And depending upon which version you go with, but the famous name for it's not the one that they used for the Big Finish. The people who wrote the comic strips originally in the 80s put forward an idea for a story called The Song of the Space Whale, where basically a big city is latched onto a whale, and the Doctor and the companion end up going through the intestines. And anyway, but I thought, because I can't only criticise them for riffing off other Doctor Who stories, I would give you a few other bits and pieces. So, as mentioned in the news section, we've got a new range of books coming out called Doctor Who Icons. The first two of which are Frida Kahlo and the Skull People, and Charles Darwin and the Silurian Survivors. Survivor, whatever it's called. Look, I just copy and pasted the title, I didn't read it. Interestingly though, Frida Kahlo has already met the Doctor. She was in one of the 8th Doctor comic strips, in a brilliant arc featuring some heart-rending stuff for the Doctor's companion of the time called Izzy. The 8th Doctor comic strips, they are now notoriously difficult to find in their graphic novel form. But if you hunt around on the internet and torrents, they can be found.
Okay.
And for me, the 8th Doctor comics are the glory days of the Wilderness Years.
Nice.
The story arc that they came up with, where they had a fake regeneration.
Where have we seen that one before?
Yeah. But yeah, Frida Kahlo is in them. And interestingly, Charles Darwin has already met the Doctor in an audio called Blood Tide, which features the Silurians and the Sea Devils. Right. A couple of other ones which I would recommend, though. Okay. And I don't often recommend 11th Doctor stuff, so for me to do this is quite rare.
Right.
Couple of audios. To start off with, The Runaway Train is actually a damn good story.
Cool.
And yeah, it out Moffats Moffat in some ways. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So there were, along with the Ninth Doctor books and Tenth Doctor books, we've had books for each of the Doctors with varying degrees of regularity.
Right.
Soon after the end of Matt Smith's first series, there was a book called Nuclear Time.
Okay.
This is actually, when they came out, I was so disenchanted I didn't really read them properly at the time. I would say the first 6 11th Doctor novels are a blast to read.
Oh.
Because basically
Nice.
there's no crap about cracks in the universe. The Ninth Doctor books, by the way, all have Bad Wolf references in them. The comics have
Right.
Bad Wolf references in them. But by the time you get to the Matt Smith era, they've abandoned this link between TV and stuff, and you get
Right.
basically the 11th Doctor books are standalone, and Nuclear Time is, again, how can I put this tactfully? You know how at the end of Smith's first season he kind of like travels backwards through the companion's life?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There is a very similar gimmick to Nuclear Time, but it is done so much better. But I'm not going to spoil anything else. It is a fantastic book as well for Amy and Rory. But I would strongly recommend the first 6 11th Doctor books. They are a hoot. There's no angst. There's no malice, and they're just brilliant fun. If you do hunt around online, one of the 7th Doctor novels, called Time Worm Exodus, is a sequel to the Pat Troughton story, The War Games.
Right.
And to bring us full circle, there was a 5th Doctor novel called The Sands of Time, which is actually a prequel to Pyramids of Mars, which, of course, Empire of Death is a sequel to.
Right.
And I would say that these are really difficult books to get hold of. But it just so happens that someone has done talking books of both of them.
Ah. Would that someone be Big Finish?
No.
Oh.
That someone has got a YouTube channel called HB WhoTube.
Oh, that one.
That one, yeah.
Yes.
I uploaded Sands of Time for Halloween because it is a gothic horror masterpiece. It is time travel, it is mummies, it is human sacrifice, it is Tegan having her face bitch slapped. And it is also a sequel to another 5th Doctor story, but that would be a massive spoiler.
Oh, right.
So there you go. All of those. Yes, I've been a bit sarky saying they're kind of like, rip-offs and everything. But there are only 11 stories all over in the world. And to be honest, some of the ones I've mentioned are so brilliant, it doesn't matter if you see the same story twice.
Right.
Yeah.
There are 5 fucking versions of Silver Nemesis on the Blu-ray box set. Trust me,
Yeah.
finding 2 stories with the same plot is not going to be an issue.
Right. Oh, my
Right.
goodness. Excellent. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our episode for this month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us on another journey through time and space with the Doctor. Remember, you can support the show by liking and subscribing on YouTube or subscribing on Buzzsprout for as little as $3 a month. You can send us an email at threedowho@gmail.com or a text from threedowho.buzzsprout.com. The link is at the top of every episode show notes. Follow us on Bluesky, threedowho.bsky.social, and on Facebook at facebook.com/threedowho, all one word. Remember, as the Ninth Doctor said, do you know what they call me in the ancient legends of the Dalek homeworld? The oncoming storm. You might have removed all your emotions, but I reckon right now, deep down in your DNA, there's one little spark left, and that's the fear. Doesn't it just burn when you face me? I mean, that's one of my favorite lines from the Ninth Doctor's run.
Sweetie, I don't want to know about your burning sensations.
Yeah, right.
There's a cream for it.
There's a cream for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike.
Yes.
Your final thoughts.
Just looking forward to binging some other stuff to continue on this journey down this Doctor Who.
There's a lot to binge.
Yep. I want to end on a note of optimism.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
Thanks, we could use some of that right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
With a certain social media site collapsing, there is now a magnificent Doctor Who following on Bluesky.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you are not on Bluesky, get on Bluesky. It is the most upbeat Doctor Who stuff at the moment. We are all sharing our favourite stories, our favourite Doctors. We're sharing everything positive about the series. And really, get on Bluesky.
Yeah,
not just for Doctor Who, but for
it's a
everything.
much more civil community. Anybody you don't like, you block them, and then you never have to interact with them again.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's well done. It's free. Just be a good citizen and enjoy yourself on Bluesky. It's a fantastic site.
Yeah, I've all but abandoned the bird site. I am now a social butterfly, and I would love please just join in, because it is the love of Doctor Who, and that is what this podcast is about.
Absolutely,
indeed.